Franchise reboots, that thing that sometimes brings life into a dormant series and sometimes soils the good name of a beloved series. Welcome to the Don't Pre-Order series, where we bring you the reminders to think twice before putting down that pre-order money. This is your Kingerd speaking, and today we are going to talk about these franchise reboots. While remakes can take a single game and update it with new visuals or mechanics, a reboot generally takes an existing franchise's story or gameplay and repurposes it into a new experience. To get a little meta on you, this video right here is actually a reboot. It's technically a sequel to Don't Pre-Order 2's compilation video, but while I was writing, I realized that all of the entries are reboots of some kind. So this video is framed as a standalone story with no required reading beforehand. But like, if you want to watch my other videos, I wouldn't say no to that. Rebooting a franchise happens for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes there hasn't been a release in a while, sometimes a series just wants to hop on a new trend, or maybe the last few entries were received about as well as a Chick-fil-A in Toronto. No, I think that one actually did end up doing fine after the protests, but you get the idea. Gizmo, he's gone, he don't want to talk about Chick-fil-A. Anywho, video games. Not every video game reboot turns out to be a god of war. Sometimes, despite something popular being on the box, the product inside still cripples your nostrils with the stench of modern gaming. Today we'll take a peek at 3 game reboots that gave pre-ordering fans the shaft in one way or another. Let's pull out the receipts and talk about it. Developed by NetherRealm Studios and published by Warner Bros. Games, Mortal Kombat 1 was the third beginning of the Mortal Kombat series. What? Hello. Forget it. That was supposed to be like a dog phone. It didn't work. Hey,
that really sucked!
I'll just hold her. Forget it. Let's move on. This is your Kingerd speaking. There's only 2 timelines if you don't count Mortal Kombat vs. DC. Well, does this game reset the story? Then we're calling it a reboot. Sorry about that. Winnie, you're not traumatized by any of that, were you? The short version is that Mortal Kombat 1's story uses time travel to begin a new timeline. While technically still a sequel to 2019's MK11, Ed Boon, co-creator of the series, says it's still a reboot. Fair enough. It does this to re-simplify the single-player story, dialing back the narrative complexity and appealing to more people who may not have been keeping up with all the time-traveling, dimension-hopping shenanigans of games past. If you ask some fans, the decision to make MK1 a soft reboot might have been because the writers at NetherRealm kinda wrote themselves into a corner with MK11, and their best move was just to go back and start over with the characters that you all know and love. Unless that character is D'Vorah, in which case I'd have to report you to the proper authorities. The Mortal Kombat fanbase is huge, so naturally leading up to this game's release, there was going to be a lot of hype. And if you're a repeat viewer, you already know that a lot of hype leads to pre-orders. Let's see what NetherRealm used to entice the masses to buy before they tried. Before release, you could pre-order Mortal Kombat 1 in its standard edition for $70. Even the PC and Nintendo Switch versions were $70, and this was when most releases for those were more often still at $60. This will be important later. The next step up was the premium edition at $110, which aimed to hit players right in the instant gratification bone by giving early access, 6 DLC characters, and some in-game currency.
That's horrible.
You know, there was a time when it used to absolutely enrage people when a game would market its DLC before the game had actually even come out. I mean, really, what better way is there to scream, "You're not buying a full product from us," than marketing the extra content before the game's release? It's like the studio just insults their own game, but people still buy it, so who cares? As for the last pre-order edition, we have the Collector's Edition at $250, including everything from the Premium Edition plus a Liu Kang sculpture, steelbook case, art prints, and an in-game color cosmetic, and extra in-game currency. Thanks to Mortal Kombat 1, we now have a 3-way tie for most expensive pre-order in this series, with $250 being the price for MK1's Collector's Edition, Starfield's Constellation Edition, and Cyberpunk 2077's Collector's Edition. Although the Starfield video lists the Constellation Edition at $250, I later discovered it was priced all over the place, even when under the same currency. So, to remain consistent under the American dollar, I'm going to list the most expensive widespread retailer version available, which was actually $300, making Starfield's Constellation Edition the most expensive pre-order edition in this series so far. For future reference, console or PC bundles won't count in this category. GameStop's pre-order came with a steelbook, but all 3 editions, no matter where you got them, came with access to a 3-day beta and the character Shang Tsung, which without pre-ordering, you'd have to purchase separately on your own later. You know, Shang Tsung, the character that's been in the Mortal Kombat series since its inception in 1992 and playable since 1993. Make sure you pre-order or else you're gonna have to pay for this thing that has already been in the series for decades. Thanks, NetherRealm, what a steal. I mean, they did the same thing with Shao Kahn in MK11 and people still threw their money at it then, so why would they bother coming up with something else? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And despite plenty of comments telling me that I don't understand what a beta is, I still find the concept of a AAA company charging you to play their beta still absolutely wild. Multi-million, multi-billion with a B dollar companies are charging you to help them finish their product. Hey, you know what? Since we're here, my house could use a pretty deep clean, so how about you pay me $70 and get on over here and help? And chop chop, my annual watch party for MK Annihilation's coming up, and I need this place looking like future Chrome. Anyway, a personal red flag for me is how much of MK1's marketing went into the DLC, not even the game itself. Yes, DLC characters have become a staple of the franchise in recent entries, and congrats to NetherRealm for getting people to both accept and be excited to know content was held out on them from the game's launch. But man, the online buzz around Homelander and Omni-Man as purchasable characters seemed like it was more of a focus than the base game even was. You know, that thing that already carried a price tag of $70. Don't get me wrong, if a game's gonna have DLC, I'd much rather it be content like characters instead of just cosmetics, but does it not seem odd to you that a full-priced game is already marketing their add-on content before it's even been released? Mortal Kombat 1 was released, and the final product of the rebooted story was actually pretty good. The core gameplay loop was as fun as expected, and the story was pretty well received. Well, most aspects of it anyway.
You Outworlders believe yourselves so superior. Because of Quan Chi's magic, my realm's people are no longer poisoned by sunlight. We've finally escaped the shadow. That blade's enchanted! We can't help what we are. That we feed on blood doesn't make us evil.
But with this rebooted story came a rebooted business strategy. A strategy to chase one gaming trend in particular. The live service trend of new game, less features. For things that were present in previous games but not in MK1, let's name some. Dialogue between characters in ranked and towers, crossplay so people could join larger competitions, pinning moves on the screen so you wouldn't have to keep pausing the game to see them, stage fatalities, stage interactables, character tutorials, loadouts. In MK11 you could customize 3 pieces of gear per character, but in MK1 it was only 1, and being able to see existing cosmetics before unlocking them from the loot box dispenser. Shrine. It's true, a lot of these features don't break the game, but a pretty good consensus online was that this game probably could have used a few more months of development. After all, maybe they could just add some of these features in later, you know, that mentality that players have been trained to accept like a battered housewife. Some of these live service fans have really got that I can fix him energy, I swear.
Stop! Stop now, come back! I love you!
But where the real controversy seemed to arise was in MK1's monetization. Microtransactions weren't new to the series, but this time it was different. Seeing a $10 Halloween fatality in the game's store lit the player base's outrage fuse, especially considering extra characters in the game were priced at $7.99. A brand new character with their own moveset was cheaper than one fatality. NetherRealm quickly thanked players for their feedback and added a couple more items to that $10 purchase. And I haven't even mentioned the Nintendo Switch release yet. An ugly, unpolished, buggy game called Unplayable Online was what NetherRealm approved for release. Or Warner Brothers, I don't know. If you're anything like me, you might be wondering why people online were saying, don't do the Cyrax fatality. After all, on the PS5, Series X, and PC, it's a cool callback to fatalities of old where Cyrax blows up the entire planet. But on the Switch, it's a different story. If it doesn't outright crash your console, here's what you get.
Fatality.
Now everyone knows the Switch is not as graphically capable as the PS5 or the Series X, but the problem is that they still charge $70 for this thing, which was equal in price to other console versions, but more expensive than the average Nintendo Switch game at the time. Tears of the Kingdom was $70 too, but come on. That'd be like charging $30 for a large from Pizza Hut and a $30 Lunchable pizza. Everyone knows the Lunchable pizza is superior. What kind of morons do you take us for? Mortal Kombat 1 may not have betrayed its franchise roots, but it certainly helped fighting game fans learn more about what a minimum viable product is. And let's be honest, if it weren't for the Mortal Kombat name, a lot of people would not have defended this game's monetization, poor functionality on Switch, and lack of features. But hey, in totally unrelated news, you can buy previous Mortal Kombat games right now that are feature complete at just a fraction of the price they were when they first launched. It's almost like there's a way to show studios that players will only give them money when they provide a finished product. I mean, I'm not suggesting you do anything with that information, of course. That'd be so totalitarian of me. Your money, your choice.
This is the Los Angeles Police Department. Please vacate the premises immediately for your own safety.
So pretty.
Man, does it suck to have Payday 3 in this series. All the comments from people looking forward to it in previous videos, and my god, I even put a B-roll of Payday 3 beta footage in Don't Pre-Order 2 when I said,
"It's a win for the video game industry for everyone when a game releases in a playable state and full of passion from the team that made it."
God. Well, never trust my videos, I guess. Payday 3 stretches the definition of reboot just a bit since it is a sequel to Payday 2 and doesn't really redo any of the story. Instead, it serves as a new adventure for Payday 2, gosh. Instead, it serves as a new adventure for Payday 2's characters with a new starting line. You don't really need to play the first two games to get what's going on in this one, so general audiences are welcome. 2013's Payday 2 had persisted for 10 years as the ultimate co-op heist game. The lore surrounding Payday 2's support is a lot more complex than we're going to get into here, but to keep it simple, it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Depending on which side of the fanbase you ask, the game got better or worse. Some people really liked the focus on crowd control and emergency situations that were prevalent near the beginning of Payday 2's life cycle, and some liked the more fast-paced action of later DLCs. Loot boxes, game-altering microtransactions, and a lack of console support were all hot-button issues. In 2016, Starbreeze, who owns Overkill Studios, purchased publishing rights of Payday 2 from that game's publisher, 505 Games, and as a first order of business, removed microtransactions from the game. And some fans rejoiced, and others saw it as a PR strategy to build up some goodwill for the next games they were going to be releasing. Well, it turns out they needed all the positive PR they could get. Overkill's game The Walking Dead released in November 2018 to an absolutely abysmal launch. It was received so poorly, Skybound Entertainment, the company behind the Walking Dead comic books, terminated their contract with Starbreeze just 3 months after the game's launch. This move meant all support for the game would end immediately, all physical copies that had already been shipped to stores would be recalled, and the game would be removed from Steam. Again, this game had only been out for 3 months, and guess what? It had pre-order bonuses too. Just saying. It probably wouldn't hurt for more studios to face consequences like this when they release a broken game, if we're being honest. Hey, what the heck? Weird glitch. Anywho, all of the red flags were there leading up to Payday 3's launch. This isn't something to celebrate, but I did bring this up to somebody in the comments. Wherever you are, I hope you pulled through. Since any studio with more than 2 brain cells to rub together knows most players don't trust gaming journalism anymore, an event was hosted where Starbreeze brought in YouTube content creators to come play beta versions of the game in exchange for promoting it on their YouTube channels. You may have seen some of these videos yourself if you follow a variety of gaming channels. There's a lot that could be said about this situation in its entirety, probably even enough for a whole video if I'm being honest. As for the game's price, Payday 3 actually has a distinction in this series.
A distinction.
The standard edition was priced at $40 instead of the new industry standard of $70. Starbreeze attributed this pricing to wanting gaming to be more accessible and more affordable. On its face, that sounds more generous, but Business 101 says that the cheaper the game, the more likely people are to buy microtransactions, which are far and above more profitable for live service games than a base cost is. But a win's a win, so a $40 ticket to the base game sounds pretty good to me. If you weren't waiting for the game to hit Game Pass on release, Payday 3 could be pre-ordered in its standard edition for $40, its silver edition for $70, which came with 3 days of early access, a 6-month season pass for automatic access to some future DLCs, and the Dark Sterling Mask cosmetic. The Gold Edition for $90 with the perks of silver and 6 more months of a season pass, the cosmetic Skull of Liberty mask and Gold State gloves, or finally the Collector Edition for $130, which added a deck of cards, a letter to the membership club, some stickers, and a gold collector's mask. Today also brings us a new record for number of pre-order editions, with Payday 3's 4 different editions. Retailer-specific versions won't count, sorry Battlefront 2, and if one edition has both a physical and digital version,
That still only counts as one!
oddly enough, the most expensive version of the game didn't come with the early access period that was included in the cheaper options, probably since it was a physical copy of the game that retailers wouldn't distribute till launch day. Weird choice though, I'm not really sure why Starbreeze would do that. All pre-order editions came with the same cosmetic mask and outfit as well. Was the instant gratification worth it? Well, during Payday 3's early access period, players who had forked over cash early were met with the exact opposite of instant gratification. Server instability and crashes made it tough for players to stay connected, and for a game that required online access to play anything other than the tutorial, that's a problem. PlayStation 5 players discovered they were actually playing an older build of the game that wasn't intended for release, not the most updated one. This meant that crossplay was not available for PS5 players during that time. To stick it to the PlayStation players even more, digital pre-order bonuses were also not available to them because of server issues, with Starbreeze stating that they'd be viewable on players' accounts on the official launch day, but not during the early access period. And then finally, a lot of players who purchased from the Epic Store couldn't even get past the intro screen. Good on Starbreeze for being communicative during this time, but people didn't purchase tweets, they purchased a game. And when Payday 3 officially launched, even more people who were ready to play that game flooded into the already struggling servers. And so, in true bank robber fashion, players who had purchased the game were instead rewarded with a playable tutorial and a loading screen for their money. Payday 3 servers were so unprepared for the traffic, it was nearly impossible to find a single game no matter how long you sat in the matchmaking queue. Some YouTuber post-launch reviews just included footage of the matchmaking screen, since that's all the gameplay footage they could even get.
Dad, when do we get to the ride?
This is the ride! Yippee!
Payday 3 eventually got into a playable state like 9 or 10 days after its official launch, but the damage had already been done. What probably would have been their peak player count was completely squandered. As of this video's recording almost 2 months after launch, Payday 2 is beating Payday 3 in Steam's player count by over 5 times the number of players, if you don't count the people that are still playing their downloaded betas. It's too bad those pre-order bonuses for Payday 3 don't transfer backwards to Payday 2, or maybe people would have actually gotten to use them. By daring to dive into the controversies of Diablo 4, I'm fully aware there's some rabid defenders of this game that will immediately be turned off just by its inclusion here, but pretending our favorite series can do no wrong is about as helpful as the 9 button on a microwave, so here we are. The story of Diablo 4 really starts with Diablo 3. Back in 2012, that hotly anticipated game, which was also a reboot of sorts for the Diablo series, was released to a flurry of criticism for its art style, connection requirements, and auction house. The art style took away from the dark, hellish theme the series had been known for and gave it more of a cartoony look. The online requirement removed players' ability to enjoy the game even if they wanted to play solo or had bad internet connections. And the auction house removed the primary purpose of even playing the game by allowing players to purchase better loot with real money. Diablo 3 had been a huge departure from what made the first two so beloved in a lot of ways, even though the core gameplay loop of dungeon clearing and loot finding was still present. A nice red flag about what kind of game Diablo 4 would be reared its demonic head in the form of everybody's favorite slot machine simulator, Diablo Immortal. I'm not going to dive too deep into this game here, but the long and short of it is, players learned 2 things about Blizzard from Diablo Immortal. 1, Blizzard was immensely out of touch with what its fanbase wanted, and 2, Blizzard had no problem shoving 10 slots of monetization into a 5-slot stash. Leading up to the release of Diablo 4, Blizzard promised it had learned from the launch of Diablo 3 and would give players yet another soft reboot of the series.
The story in Diablo 4 will appeal to both new players and hardcore Diablo fans. And when writing this next chapter, we really wanted to return to our darker roots.
With that darker tone, players were promised a new experience every time you returned to Diablo 4, with more content than ever before. The game would be highly replayable, and players would always have new activities to run into.
We have much longer, sort of narrative-heavy side quests, and we have some shorter side quests, so you never feel like you're always doing the same thing. The pacing is always a little bit different.
Where have we heard this one before? Well, I mean, a highly replayable game with more content than ever before sounds great. But if seasons worked in Diablo 4 even remotely to how they worked in Diablo 3, this would mean character progress would have to reset every few months if you wanted to try the new stuff and keep up with seasonal content. Did highly replayable mean that players would want to play the same content over and over again? Or they would have to? Would there be any difference in the experience each time we replayed something in the game? Quit asking questions, go back to Call of Duty, you filthy casual, you just don't understand Diablo games. Before release, Diablo 4 could be pre-ordered in 3 editions. Interestingly, all editions came with a few pre-order bonuses for other Blizzard games, such as wings and a pet for Diablo 3, a mount for World of Warcraft, and a cosmetic set for Diablo Immortal. As for the unique offerings for Diablo 4, the standard edition came with the base game for $70, the deluxe edition went for $90, which came with the game, 4 days of early access, a battle pass unlock, yes, because players apparently tolerate full-priced games having paid battle passes now, and also a mount and armor for your mount. And finally, the Ultimate Edition for $100, which added 20 tier skips for the Battle Pass and the Wings of the Creator emote. However, there was one more kind of pre-order edition, but it didn't come with a copy of the game. The Limited Collector's Box for $96.66. Do you get it? 666. And it came with some candles, a mouse pad, art book, sanctuary map, pin, and art prints. I'm not counting this as a pre-order edition since it didn't come with the game, but I think it's worth mentioning. This is it, fellow pre-orderers. Diablo 4 is releasing soon, but we paid for extra early access. Rev up those fryers. It's time to clap some demon. True to form for modern gaming, Diablo 4's early access period granted many players with absurdly long queue times, or simply wouldn't allow them to connect to the game at all. It's almost like tolerating and defending bad servers for AAA launches leads to that happening more often. Some fans tried to brush this off because there were some workarounds that worked for some people, but if we can allow honesty into this conversation, those workarounds shouldn't have been necessary after spending up to $100 on a game. With the full release, Diablo 4 came with both praise and criticism. A large consensus was that it was fun, and the revamped art style was much better than 3, but that new car smell wore off way too fast. Highly replayable content actually meant repeating the same or very similar quests and dungeons over and over and over and over and over.
Phone call, Mr. Plankton.
And the next day, and the next day, and the next day.
The grind wouldn't have felt so tedious if you'd actually gotten more powerful as you went, but Diablo 4 included enemies that scaled in power with you, so you might be getting more powerful, but so was everything else.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
But that's what Diablo's about, repeating and farming. Well, yes, but what happens when the objectives being repeated and farmed aren't varied or rewarding enough even for Diablo standards? Well, apparently, you get an army of die-hard Diablo fans online trying to gaslight you into agreeing that seeing the same areas, button mashing against the same enemies, and grinding the same loot repeatedly is the second coming of Christ. Never before have I seen a game get criticized so much, and every time I see it criticized, the person has to give a disclaimer like, well, maybe I'm the problem, maybe it's me. What makes a game good or bad is subjective. After all, people like what they like, but where are people allowed to draw the line between the Diablo grind and too much grind? Well, we might have gotten the answer to that question in the form of players' response to Diablo 4's Season 1 update, which had a lot to contribute to the current Metacritic user score of 2.2. This update slapped players with nerfs across the board that made leveling up slower and required even more grinding than it already had. Not to mention, the seasonal update meant if you wanted your character to be eligible for season rewards, you had to start their progress over. So couple that with a longer grind and you've got yourself a one-way ticket to Snoozeville, USA. It honestly wouldn't have shocked me if Blizzard had considered adding like XP boosters to the shop, but maybe googled nerf XP, make players pay for it back, then saw the crap show Marvel's Avengers went through, so they just said, never mind, just dish out $30 cosmetics. I'll say it though, if you tolerate and feed into the monetization of Fortnite in a game that's already full priced, you are the reason why we will see that again. These changes in Season 1 were met with so much player backlash, even Blizzard admitted it was a bad idea and promised to never do it again. This attempt at an artificial increase of players' time in-game led a lot of people to question how much longevity Diablo 4 would really have.
Hello.
If players were upset about having to repeat the game's content more frequently, how much fun could it really be? That's the opposite of how a player should feel about a game. They should play it repeatedly because they want to, not because they feel like they have to.
Baby man, little baby man.
They should want to keep replaying it, not feel like they have to. Unless you're meeting in Lumbee to farm some chickens, of course. That gets a pass. But never fear, Diablo fans. Your seasonal character may be useless in the next 3 months, and grinding the same 3 skill attacks may give you carpal tunnel, but that $100 pre-ordered emote will last forever. In a brand new segment for this series, it's time to give out some rewards. We'll catch up on the winners of previous videos too. In a 100% completely objective, solely based on fact award, we have the Wind Waker Award, which will go to the game with the best pre-order bonuses in its highest edition. Its name honors The Legend of Zelda's Wind Waker pre-order bonus being an extra disc with an entire port of both Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time Master Quest that came with the Wind Waker game. For this award, the games themselves won't be competing, just the pre-order bonuses. The main criteria will be price, overall cool factor, and likelihood for someone to pre-order for this bonus. Today's Wind Waker Award for best pre-order bonuses goes to Payday 3's Collector Edition. The cheaper editions of the game having early access and the most expensive one not having it is about as cool as showering with your dad, but the gold mask makes for a way better looking collectible than MK1's Liu Kang statue in my opinion, and Payday 3's was half the price of MK1's. The extra characters in MK1 are the better digital bonuses out of the two, but the price point is a tough one for me to justify for what you get, so Payday 3 takes the award today. At the bottom of the totem pole, we have the Glow Stick Award, which honors the legendarily terrible pre-order bonus for Infamous Second Son. You can look that one up in more detail on your own if you want to. Today's glow stick for worst bonuses in a top pre-order edition goes to Diablo 4's Ultimate Edition. Although early access is included in this one, the most significant pre-order bonuses added to this edition from the one below it are basically just coupons for other monetization structures that exist in this already fully priced game. Emotes being worth a pre-order might fly at the Clown Academy, but here in the real world, that's heresy. The Diablo 4 Collector's Box would have won this award had it included the game in it. Hey Blizzard, Bath & Body Works called. They want their candles back. To catch up on previous videos that didn't have this segment, the Wind Waker Award for best bonuses goes to Aliens Colonial Marines Collector's Edition for Don't Pre-Order 1, with its relatively lower price of $100, coming with both digital cosmetics and a sweet looking Power Loader statue, while the Glow Stick for Don't Pre-Order 1 goes to Fallout 76 Power Edition, because nobody who pays $200 for a pre-order edition deserves to be blatantly lied to about the bag they're buying. For Don't Pre-Order 2, the Wind Waker goes to Cyberpunk 2077's Collector's Edition. This one was tough because it was so expensive, but most of the other bonuses in that video can really just be chalked up to digital cosmetics and coupons, and while Cyberpunk's Collector's Edition is way more expensive than I'd ever pay for a game, I've got to admit the items in it do actually look worthy of being in a collection of someone who really likes Cyberpunk. The Glow Stick Award for Don't Pre-Order 2's worst bonuses goes to Golem's Precious Edition with its emotes, art book, and Elvish language option. Do people genuinely like paying extra for emotes and art books? I honestly don't understand. And finally, for solo videos, the different editions will just compete with each other. So for Starfield's video, the Wind Waker goes to the $100 Premium Edition, because I can respect DLC being included, and that extra $150 on top of that for the Constellation Edition's watch case, and cred stick is nuts to me. And last but not least, Starfield's Glow Stick Award for the worst pre-order bonus goes to the Standard Edition. That Mars skin pack looks almost indistinguishable from a lot of the loot you already find anyway, and with no early access included like it was in the higher tiers, I honestly fail to see how this version would have persuaded anyone to pre-order the game, even if it didn't cost any extra money. Once the video for Payday 3's YouTuber controversy is up, I'll put it right here so you can click it. If it's not there yet, feel free to subscribe if you want to be alerted about when it drops. But what games are you still thinking about pre-ordering? Let me know in the comments and we'll see if it ends up in this series someday. And as always, thank you for watching. Kingerd out.